Ryan, and this is the PS We Expire podcast. This episode is all about happiness. And the reason is because this last, December, January, February, probably 4 months have been rough. And I've hesitated making this episode because, not because I don't think that what I have to talk about is important or accurate, but because I don't feel back to my regular self yet. And somehow I thought that the things that I was going to share about happiness would then somehow be disqualified. But I don't think that's true. I think that the reality is that I really struggle with presenting myself as someone who is not in control of myself. And I don't want to do that. It's not true to not share how difficult and sad and lonely and heartbreaking and grief-filled and to stay in my bed and scroll on my phone is. But I feel like I'm coming into this season of renewed motivation to pursue happiness for myself, like fiercely, because what other option do I have just to continue to feel the way that I'm feeling? So I have been probably for the last 6 weeks or so, maybe less, but really have come back into my life with a renewed determination to pursue happiness. So I want to share with you what that has looked like for me, and then really just the very practical things that are contributing to me feeling better. And I hope that they're helpful. And perhaps, like me, you have been not just bogged down in your own personal hard stuff that's going on, but in collective difficulty. And I came across this quote the other day, and it said, "How am I supposed to feel joy when the world around me is being destroyed?" And the answer is, however you can. I've been thinking about this idea of happiness as this, usually it's painted, this picture of happiness is painted of that it's selfish, that it's pointless, that it's frivolous. It's a frivolous pursuit. But the reality is that happiness infects your entire life, that it shows up in your relationships and changes your relationships. It changes your ability to turn outward and to be open to life again. The sadness and grief and despair cause us to block ourselves, cause us to shrink, and cause us to turn inward and shirk away from life. And so what I want to do is not just for myself, but also invite you into a pursuit of opening again to life. And one of the key ways to do that is to wholeheartedly pursue your own happiness. I am learning a lot about how happiness has been defined over the years, particularly in the field of psychology, and the difference between hedonic happiness and eudaimonic happiness. So if you think about happiness, like happiness is just pleasure. It's just, doing the things that make you feel good, that happiness is just a sense of like the opposite of sadness, that you're really doing things that just light you up and that are great. That's definitely part of it. That's hedonic happiness. But the other part of happiness is this eudaimonic happiness, which invites us into meaning and purpose. And often when people talk about happiness, they kind of focus heavy on the hedonic happiness. There's this idea within psychology that's called the hedonic treadmill, which is that as you pursue things that feel good, there is an adaptation over time to those things. And so you have to constantly increase the stimulus that makes you happy. So it's this treadmill of always having to have more or bigger or better. And what I want to suggest is actually that the problem isn't so much that we're always looking for more and bigger and better. It's that we don't have a well-balanced view of happiness where we have elements of the hedonic and the eudaimonic happiness. What I find really interesting about this term eudaimonic is it's Greek, but if you think of the word the daimon, daimon, eudaimonic, the word really is talking about the self, the capital S self. It's the true, authentic, deep, real you. And in the pursuit of eudaimonic happiness, what you're looking for is ways to express the deepest parts of yourself, to align your life in a way that is so authentic and real to who you really are, that you feel like you are contributing in a positive way to other people's lives, to the humans as a collective, and that you are adequately expressing all the things that are innate to you, that you are being able to participate in activities that you feel like, yes, like this is for me. So what I have been thinking about a lot are just some ways to do that. What are some ways that I can bring both types of happiness back into my life, and that I can take charge of this? So many of us turn to our relationships to make us happy. I absolutely do not believe in this idea of that your happiness is solely your responsibility. I don't think that's true at all, because studies have shown that one of the greatest determinants of whether or not we are happy in our lives, and happiness is a contribution to physical and mental well-being and longevity, are the quality of our social relationships. So I'm not saying that those components in our lives are irrelevant. I'm not saying that at all. What I am saying, though, is that you need to be the one that's in charge of figuring out what your compass is pointing you towards. That you are the one who needs to figure out the types of relationships that you want to have in your life, or the ways that you need to change the relationships in your life to be more aligned with you. So the social aspect is absolutely important, but what I want to think about and talk about on this podcast and challenge you to is to start turning your attention towards the things that you have control over. And I guarantee you that one of the things that you absolutely do not have control over is other people. So let's think now instead about what things you can do in your own life that help cultivate happiness. Because life is too short to just be perpetually bummed out all the time. The number one, sometimes you really do need to get your levels checked. You need to get your hormone levels checked. You need to see if you have some type of metabolic or immune thing going on that is contributing to your inability to really engage with life in the way that you want to. Because imbalances are a real thing. And there are many, many physiological reasons why you might be having a difficult time being happy right now. So that's job one. Find your medical practitioner, your family doctor, a naturopath, someone that can help address just some of the things on the physiological level. Very, very important. Apart from that, here are the things that you can do on a daily basis, on a regular basis, that will contribute to increasing your happiness. Number one, this is going to seem like a no-brainer, because all of us know this and all of us want to do this more, but for whatever reason, we just don't, even though we know it makes us feel better when we do this. So I'm going to encourage you, don't just know that this one makes a difference, but put action into your life to make this a reality. Number two, I guess, is to take a break from the news. Good God, take a break from the news. I would include in that, take a break from social media. Because I don't know about you, but so much of my social media feed is full of politics. It's full of people's takes on politics. It's full of people making fun of what's happening in politics and in the world. And you have to take a break from that stuff, because so much of what we're seeing on there, we can't do anything about. And many of the things that come across our path that we cannot do anything to control, but that still provokes so much fear and anxiety and worry and anger and rage. Why are we continuing to do this to ourselves? We're giving our brains a task that they can't solve by continuing to just fill our minds with that stuff. So take a break. Take a break. The times when I have found I have to be most strict with myself when it comes to my phone usage is right before I go to bed. I have to do it. I have to be super careful about what I'm doing right before I go to bed, because when we are on the verge of sleep is when the communication between the subconscious and the conscious mind is most open. So if you think about it this way, like as you're falling asleep, you know that time when you know that you're still awake, but you know that you're just on the verge of sleep. Okay, so your mind is wide open. Your gatekeepers are not as on high alert. And so if you are scrolling on your phone or watching the news when you're already kind of getting into that mental space, you are much more open to all sorts of negative messaging, and you're much more open to fear and worry. So I would just highly recommend whatever you can do, whatever steps you need to take to get yourself off of your phone, particularly right before you're going to bed, do that. And you will see within just a few days. I know those first few days of changing this habit you almost feel itchy with wanting to grab your phone and perpetuate these habits that you have, but I guarantee you will feel a major difference. Okay, the next thing is put things on your calendar that make you happy, that make you feel like, that give you something that you're looking forward to, something to be excited about. I started doing this a few years ago, where I would just put something on the calendar 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 months out with no idea about who was going to join me for that activity or what. But like I would buy 2 tickets to a comedian, or I would buy 2 tickets to the symphony. I would plan a trip somewhere and book an Airbnb with no idea who was going to come with me for sure. Like I didn't know for sure. I didn't check with anybody before I put these things on my calendar, but it's like I knew these are things that I wanted to do. These weren't just, arbitrary, like click anywhere and sign up for these things, but it was things that make me feel delighted and that I'm excited about. And I just started doing that, trusting that the people that I asked to join me would be able to come. And if they didn't, I'll find somebody else. And it has been just such a delight to do this and to look forward to things on my calendar that I was feeling excited about. This is a great way to have your brain stop thinking about the things that you want to do. There's a really wonderful way to tackle some of the overwhelm that comes with a to-do list. This is a little bit of an aside, but for me, it actually contributes greatly to my happiness, because I'm not constantly thinking about the next thing that I have to do. If you take your to-do list and actually put those things on your calendar on a specific day with a specific time, a specific starting and ending point, you will be amazed at how much it frees your brain up from having to think about those things. So I would recommend doing that even with the things that you are really excited about. It doesn't have to be something big. Maybe it's just that you really like going for hikes, or there's a particular park that you like taking a walk in, but you never feel like you have time to do. Put it on your calendar. Put it on your calendar and give yourself something to look forward to, and trust that right now you're making plans that your future self is going to be so happy to follow through on. Okay, so that's number 3. Number 4, get involved. Get to know your neighbors. your actual literal neighbors. Don't just spend all your time in relationships with people online or via text or, phone calls are good too, but get to know people in real life. I've really tried to be much more intentional about connecting with people in my town and finding ways to bring back some of the like really neighborly things, like taking my sick neighbor's homemade chicken soup or homemade bread, things like that, where it really is just these little gestures that remind ourselves and remind other people that we're not alone. I mentioned this right at the outset that, again, studies have shown that the quality of our relationships is one of the greatest determiners of our well-being. So, in that same vein, find ways to be of service to other people. Send people letters in the mail. Give them a phone call. Do intentional acts of kindness with the people in your life or with strangers. Just get connected, get involved with others. The next one, number 5. Well, okay, these last two really are more about mindset than they are about anything physical and tangible. The next one may sound harsh, but I'm saying it just as much to me as I am to you. Stop feeling sorry for yourself. Stop feeling sorry for yourself. There was a study done a number of years ago for people who were suffering from depression. And one half of the group, they treated with, I don't know, like cognitive behavioral therapy or something like that. And the other half of the group, they said, you have to start paying attention to the language that you're using in your everyday life. So anytime you find yourself saying a phrase where you are positioned as the victim or that you're positioned as the person who is powerless, change your language. So when, instead of something like, I don't have time, that really seems like you're at the mercy of all these other things in your life. So if you can just shift your language to, I'm not going to make time for that. Even just this slight shift makes a big impact because you're starting then to train your brain to look for areas where you actually have control. I would say that so much of depression and anxiety, I'm not speaking about this from like a clinical perspective necessarily because I'm not a clinician, but it seems to me like so many of these things really come from a sense of things being outside of my control. Because the more that I feel like I don't have any way to change my circumstances, the more stuck we feel, the more powerless we feel. And so if we consciously and intentionally start to notice the areas in our life and the places where we have choice, where we have autonomy, then this is what happens is we give our brains a job to do, to start looking for the areas where we have choice. And it's very easy for me when I'm feeling sad, when I'm feeling really down, to not only feel like this is going to last forever, but also that I feel sad and then I feel sorry for myself for feeling so sad. Sometimes that's totally fine to do that. I just have to catch myself and be like, okay, now that I see that I'm doing that, how long do I want to stay here? Morgan, stop feeling sorry for yourself. Said with so much love and not as a way to shame me into feeling sorry for myself, but as a way to empower me to start looking at life differently. And the last one, oh God, this one's so hard. The last one is tell the truth. Tell the truth. This one is difficult for me because, well, I said this at the outset that I don't like appearing to people that I'm not controlled, that I'm not in control of myself. And sometimes telling the truth is saying, hey, I'm not doing okay. Or having a conversation with someone, whether it's a friend or a partner or a parent, about really what's not working in your relationship, that you tell the truth about the reality that you're living in. A prime example of this is not wanting to look at your bank account. If you're feeling, financially strapped, or you get to the end of the month and there's more month than there is paycheck, sometimes it's difficult to look truth square in the face, to be brave enough to tell the truth about the circumstances that you're in, whether it's financial or relational or whatever. It's really difficult to do that. And some of us have used not telling the truth as an adaptive behavior. It's been a way to cope for things that don't feel safe. But we are adults and we get to tell the truth about what's really happening with us. And there's something really beautiful about telling the truth that is an important part of integrating all the parts of ourself. Because when we are not telling the truth, it means that there's something within ourselves that we're hiding, which means there's a part of us that we've kind of kicked out or silenced. And usually we can be really good at justifying the reason why we're not telling the truth about that part, because often telling the truth is really disruptive and it requires things to change. The book, The Way of Integrity by Martha Beck, is a phenomenal example of what truth telling will do in your life. a scary example, but a really good one. She talks a lot about how so many of her physical symptoms resolved when she started telling the truth. Everything that I've talked about today, that was my last one, but everything that I've talked about today really is in service of your well-being. And it's a really lovely thing to think about the pursuit of happiness from a self-interested perspective. When I think about how I want my body to be healthy, how I want my relationships to be healthy, the type of example I want to be as a mother to my kids, I think about the importance of pursuing happiness. When I think about really the studies even on longevity point to people who are happy because of these, two parts of happiness, the hedonic and the eudaimonic happiness, live longer, healthier lives. I want to live a long and healthy life. Therefore, a pursuit of happiness is actually really important. It might be one of the most important things I can do. If I want to ward off things like inflammation and illness, continuing to pursue things that contribute to my mental and physical well-being, I can't think of a more important venture than that. And many of you have known for a long time that you have not either allowed yourself to pursue the things that make you happy, or maybe other people have told you that it's unimportant. And I'm here to tell you that it's not unimportant. It's extremely important, extremely valuable. Many of us shy away from things that make us happy for any number of reasons. We've come to really distrust pleasure. And hopefully we can start to really pay attention to things that bring us joy as actually just signposts that we're on the right path, that we wouldn't view them as evidence that we're selfish, but really evidence that we're on track. I want to read you this poem by Mary Oliver to close out this episode. Don't Hesitate by Mary Oliver. If you suddenly and unexpectedly feel joy, don't hesitate. Give into it. There are plenty of lives and whole towns destroyed or about to be. We are not wise and not very often kind. and much can never be redeemed. Still, life has some possibility left. Perhaps this is its way of fighting back that sometimes something happens better than all the riches or power in the world. It could be anything, but very likely you notice it in the instant when love begins. Anyway, that's often the case. Anyway, whatever it is, don't be afraid of its plenty. Joy is not made to be a crumb. That's the final thoughts on this. Take the pursuit of happiness very seriously. It is very, very important work to pursue happiness. All right, that's it for today. But before we go, P.S. we expire. Morgan again, really quick. I just was kind of tossing and turning yesterday when I recorded that bit about this phrase, stop feeling sorry for yourself. And I wanted to share, because that can sound like such a harsh thing to say, but I want to share the first time I heard it and what that experience was like. So I was in a really, really, really tough spot in my life. I was going through a really incredibly rough patch in my marriage. My dad had recently passed away, and my daughter had also gone through some really difficult times with hospitalizations and stuff. And I was just like really, really feeling beaten down, really feeling like, is this ever going to get any better? This is what I heard from the most loving, gentle, benevolent place within myself or from the universe or wherever, but the intention and the kindness and the clarity behind this phrase was unmistakable. And it was this: are you ready to stop feeling sorry for yourself? It wasn't I wasn't being admonished for feeling that way. It wasn't a dismissal of how hard everything was. It wasn't a, you shouldn't feel sad about these things or just get over your pity party already. It came from this place of, are you ready to recognize that these things are outside of your control? And are you ready to intentionally move to a place where you can make your life beautiful? Because if I was going to stay in that spot where I was just feeling so sorry for myself, I couldn't put any effort into making my life what I wanted it to be. So I just had to jump back on and share that this phrase, stop feeling sorry for yourself, doesn't come from a place of shaming or disapproval, but it comes from a place of deep knowing that a beautiful life is still possible. You have to find the things that you actually have control over, things that you can change, and to not be stuck in these spirals of self-pity. It comes from the most beautiful, kind, loving place. So I just had to jump back on and share that with you, because I don't ever want you to feel like that's such a harsh thing to say. And I also wanted you to hear the circumstances that surrounded the first time that I really clearly heard that, from that deep knowing, from the deep, deep knowing that there's still beautiful things ahead. Okay, for reals, that is it. Take care.